Last offseason, they traded for Corbin Burns. They traded Joey Ortiz, who looks like he's going to be a really good player, and DL Hall, who still has a chance to be a good pitcher, as well as the 34th pick. They still have enough to take a similar shot at Cease.
Inside Scoop time with FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal. Ken, we'll start with the Orioles and Corbin Burns. I'll combine the question because yesterday I'm like, oh, the Orioles signed someone. It's not Corbin Burns. It actually doesn't seem like they're the front runners, but what do you think of their Sugano signing and what's next for them?
I like the signing. Certainly, this guy is one of the most accomplished pitchers in Japanese baseball history. He has won awards over there. He's had a great run, great ERA last year. So for 1 year, 13 million, I know he's older, 35 years old, but my goodness, they entered the offseason looking for two starters. They wanted two. The first one would be ideally a top of the rotation guy, a front of the rotation guy, 1, 2, or 3. The second one, the way it was explained to me, was more of an upside play, someone maybe off the radar a little bit. Well, that's Sugano. And it seems to me that this only can be a prelude to a bigger move. Now, it doesn't have to be Burns. It could be a trade for Cease, for Castillo, for anyone else that is out there. But at the same time, at least this gives them something. And now they still have to make the bigger move. I like sort of what they've done so far. Tyler O'Neill, decent signing if he stays healthy. Gary Sanchez, the same. Sugano, okay. But at the same time, you have to get that front of the rotation guy, in my opinion. They need that. I know they have the possibility of Bradish and Wells coming back in the second half. You can't count on that. You've got to get someone to go with Eflin and Grayson Rodriguez and go from there.
When we look at that list of the pitchers that are still available, are you looking at the Orioles as, okay, this pitcher's 150 million that's out of their range, or is it years that you feel like, in your opinion, Mike Elias is afraid to go too many years for any starting pitcher?
First of all, I don't know what their range is under their new ownership. It's impossible to say. They have taken over and they haven't done anything big yet. They haven't shown any hesitation on certain players like Tyler O'Neill, but at the same time, they have not gone here. Now, maybe they'll never go to that level, and this is still a small market team by baseball's definition. It's still a team that probably shouldn't be spending $250 million on Corbin Burns based on their revenues, unless the owner decides he wants to do a little Steve Cohen. So I don't expect them to do Burns, and I don't know that Mike Elias would advise them doing Burns as he tries to manage the payroll, but there are other ways to go. Look at Cease, for example. Last offseason, they traded for Corbin Burns. They traded Joey Ortiz, who looks like he's going to be a really good player, and DL Hall, who still has a chance to be a good pitcher, as well as the 34th pick. They still have enough to take a similar shot at Cease. It's a 1 year thing, just like it was with Burns, but they have players that they're not going to be able to play in the major leagues. There's too many of them, position prospects in particular. So I can see them going that route, and that would be okay. But as far as what the problem is with regard to the free agent market, I'm not exactly sure. Years, dollars, it doesn't really matter, Eric. Look at Max Fried's deal. The dollars are really high. The years are really high, but they're essentially giving him, in my opinion, that $218 million. That's for 6 years. It's like 30-something million AAV, but they stretch it to 8 to get the AAV down to 27.5 for luxury tax purposes. So it's how you calculate it. It doesn't really matter. Again, until we see the Orioles do something big, we won't know if their ownership is willing to go to that length.
Yeah, that's a smart move by the Yankees. Obviously, it helps them in the short term to stay under or stay, on a lower tier with that number. By the way, I just wanted to point out really quickly, I like how you use the term, like, if he just wants to go Steve Cohen, like, you're going to get people being like, yo, you want to go out to dinner tonight? You want Steve Cohen it, like big steakhouse? That's cool. He's got that reputation right now. Anyway, one more follow-up for you on the Orioles, Ken. So in your notes column, you wrote about a chance that they could trade for someone like Dylan Cease for a season, which they did last year with Corbin Burns. I like that. I still have a hard time believing the Padres really want to shed Dylan Cease. I get the trade market. Here's the problem I have. I thought the Orioles are worried about losing, a comp pick and their prospect hugging, but then they're still going to do these trades for 1 year rentals. Like, where are we here? That sounds like they're saying both things. So they really just Yeah, like what is the plan
Keep in
here?
mind, if you trade for Dylan Cease, you can do the same thing you did with Corbin Burns, make him a qualifying offer. So if you trade a pick, you get the pick back. And that's what they did with Burns, right? If he signs somewhere else, then they're going to get a pick in the 30s. They lost a pick in the 30s when they made that trade. So that part of it, from their perspective, it's okay. The question of prospect hugging, it's always a fair question with a team like this that is loaded with prospects. It's a fair question with the Red Sox, and it was a fair question. And then they made the move for Crochet, which reduced their depth somewhat in their farm system. Obviously, the Orioles know that their window lasts only so long. Gunnar Henderson, 4 more years of control. Now, that's not tomorrow that he's going away, but his salary is going to rise. And at some point, if you can't sign him to an extension, and they probably won't be able to sign him to an extension because he's represented by Scott Boras, then you have to think about moving him. So they do have some urgency about them. At least they should. And if it takes Cease rather than a long-term deal for a Corbin Burns, all right, that's the way they go. But the way I see it, Scott, they've got to get one more. They've got to get one more guy at the top, not in the middle, at the top. 1, 2, or 3, that's fine. But it has to be someone that really can fit into that slot.
Okay, Ken, you know, Dylan Cease, great. But you hear Cubs are going after Jesus Luzardo. Why are the Orioles not in on him? Why are the Orioles not making the trade for Garrett Crochet like the Red Sox did? Like, I get it, but at some point, Mike Elias is going to have to get off his prospects and send some away to get something in return. Now, I know he did it for Corbin Burns, but these guys have more than 1 year of control. So these are the guys you would think the Orioles would be like they traded for Zach Eflin. Great, because he had an extra year. But boom, I mean, you hear Luzardo to the Cubs, which you can dig in after, and you hear of some of these other guys, Crochet going. But why are they not using their prospects to Luis Castillo in Seattle? Guys like this that seem to be available that they seem like they could go get and overbid for whatever, overpay maybe to get the guys with multiple years.
AJ, all fair questions. And I could construct a deal with their prospects similar to the deal that the Red Sox made for Crochet. They have enough to do it. They had enough to do it. Luzardo is a little bit different. He's a guy who's been hurt a lot. He's pitched over 100 innings only once in his career. He's coming off an injury. I don't know that would be the guy I go for. He's going to cost less than Crochet would, obviously. But a Castillo, a Crochet, yes, in my view, they should be in play for those guys. And yes, you're right. You want the greater control rather than the 1 year of control with Cease. It's rolling the dice the same way you did with Burns. And same agent, Scott Boras, he's going to go to the market, Dylan Cease is, and you're probably not going to be able to pay him. So I agree with you that this is the kind of move, the longer term play for in a trade that they should be looking at. Why they haven't done it, I'm not exactly sure.
This holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique. That gift is StoryWorth.
Here's how it works. Each week, StoryWorth emails your loved one a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick. Things like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? And what's the farthest you've ever traveled? All your loved one needs to do is respond with a story. Long or short, it doesn't matter. After that year of fun, StoryWorth compiles those stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. This is the perfect book to pass along at family gatherings or read with your kids. It is beautifully orchestrated by StoryWorth, and that's why it has more than 35,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, with millions of stories preserved since they were founded over 10 years ago.
With StoryWorth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/foul and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/foul to save $10 on your first purchase.
Ken, what do you think about the Luzardo talks with the Cubs? Some fans asking about it right now. And then there was a follow-up saying, what would the Cubs do with all those lefty starters? The fan said 3. Actually, it would be 4 if you add Luzardo to the mix. But does that matter?
It does matter, but they're all different too. Imanaga is different from Steele, who is different from Boyd, who would be different from Luzardo. Luzardo's a big stuff guy, and it seems to me that they would figure it out. They still would have Jameson Taillon. They still would have Javier Assad. And keep in mind, Imanaga pitched on the normal 4 days rest only 7 of his 29 starts last year, something like that. It was a relatively small percentage. Then you have Boyd. He's been hurt a lot. He's probably going to need some downtime. So the more starters you mix in there, they might not all be active at once. They might not be all pitching at the same time. So if they can get Jesus Luzardo at what they deem a reasonable price at a time where they're trying to win this division, they just made a win now move with Kyle Tucker. Sure, I get that. And I'd still like to see them supplement their bullpen, but maybe they move Assad back into that role. He was good in it 2 years ago. I'm not sure exactly what their thinking is, and I guess Eric and AJ would be better equipped to say 4 lefties in a rotation. Hey, that could be a problem for most teams being predominantly right-handed. But at the same time, I'm not sure you'd see all those 4 lefties pitching in one rotation. One might be on the IL at one point, one might need extra break or extra rest. All kinds of things can happen.
All right, I'm going to stay in NL Central. We've heard the rumors that Jared Jones is possibly up. We had a question from Daniel Rothenberg. Could the Orioles trade Kobe Mayo for an upside Pirates pitcher like Jared Jones or Bubba Chandler? And if they do something like that, this is my part of the question, is this a Ben Cherington thing where it's like, hey, you know what? I'm never going to get money from ownership. I have to think way outside the box and trade pitchers when no one else would trade them because I have extreme value for them?
Great question. And I don't think the answer is yes, because I think they've worked hard to build up their pitching. And they just traded one in the Andres Jimenez, Spencer Horwitz 3-team deal. They traded Luis Ortiz. So they reduced their depth with that move. And to do it with Jones, if you can get Kobe Mayo, I would imagine probably you could. I don't know exactly if it would be straight up. But if you could do that, if you're the Pirates, you need offense, you need first base offense, I would strongly consider it. But at the same time, I understand that the bigger problem for the Pirates, when you look at spending money on players, is who are the most expensive players? Starting pitchers. And they can't afford them. So to develop them in a way that they have, and they've done a good job with this, no question. Drafting 1-1 with Skeens helped. But you want to retain that strength. And it seems to me the trade of Ortiz probably reduced the chances of them trading Jared Jones.
Ken, are the things we hear about Nolan Arenado, is that the teams that he'll waive his no-trade clause? Do we know that, or is that just rumors? I mean, and what's the most likely? I know he'd love to be on the West Coast. He's from there. But you hear about Houston. You hear about some of these other teams. Would he really go to Anaheim?
I don't know that he would go to Anaheim. Nolan Arenado has talked his whole career about wanting to win. He wanted to trade from Colorado to St. Louis because he wants to win. So now he's going to go to Anaheim? I don't see that happening. We don't know the exact teams, AJ. We don't know exactly where he wants to go. I'm sure it's a select, relatively small group. The Dodgers, from what we understand, that would be a dream for him, but it's not available to him. They've got Max Muncy, and they consider themselves fine in that regard. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, because this is not the Nolan Arenado of 3 or 4 years ago. It's a different player. It's a player who appears to be in decline and who might not be in as much demand, especially when Alex Bregman is still available, as you might think. So again, I can't predict how he is going to kind of direct this, but keep in mind, he does have the ability to direct it. When a player has a full no trade protection like Arenado does, he effectively can choose his next team. So if the Cardinals say, hey, Nolan, we want to send you to Team X, and he's like, I don't want to go there, they have to keep going. They have to go to Team Y. And if he doesn't like Team Y, you got to go to Team Z. That's the power of a player having a no trade, and that's the position that Arenado is in.
Unless you're the Padres and Phil Nevin when they tried to trade him and he said no. And they're like, oh, Phil, you're catching, which they did to him. And he caught one game. He's like, okay, trade me. That was it. So unless maybe the Cardinals are like, Wilson Contreras, you're playing DH in first base. Nolan, you're going to catch a game. Okay, I'll go wherever you guys want to send me. Thank you.
That's rude.
Well, the other thing is, if there is leverage both ways. If you're the Cardinals, you can say, Nolan, you say you want to win. We're not really going to win this year. If you want to go somewhere, this is where we have a spot for you. This is where we can make a trade. The teams you want to go to, they're not saying yes to you. So, yes, the Cardinals certainly can apply their own form of leverage. I don't know that they would try to make Nolan Arenado a catcher, but they can do some other things.
All right, I'll finish with this one for you, Ken. Just crowdsourcing some questions from fans.
Get down to Ken's level, Scott.
Well, It's the hair is the problem. So I got 2 names for you, Ken.
You can't tell how
Alec
short I
Bohm.
am on camera, AJ.
Exactly. AJ.
I didn't say that. You said it. I just said he was above you. I was trying to get him on your level. You brought it up.
I appreciate it.
This is the last time you'll have AJ before he goes on vacation. So I think he's like kind of cooking up what he's got for you at the finish line. Exactly. Say goodbye to AJ for 2024. All right. Let me finish with 2 names. Alec Bohm, Framber Valdez. Just wanted to know your take on if either will be dealt, if both will be dealt at some point over the next couple months.
Valdez is really interesting because now that they've traded Tucker, at least why not continuing to listen on Valdez? Maybe they don't. Maybe they want to keep their pitching strong. One thing about the Astros, and we saw this in the return for Tucker, they are intent on competing in 2025. That's why they got Isaac Paredes in that deal along with Hayden Wesneski. At the same time, in this pitching market, once you see Burns sign and once Manaea goes off the board and a couple of others, if I'm the Astros, I'm at least listening. Maybe you get 2 young starters for Framber Valdez. It's only 1 year. I get it. But it's something that I would entertain. I don't know that they will. Again, they want to keep their team as strong as possible for 25, given that they might lose Bregman and they on top of Tucker. And if you do that, then maybe you have to go more to a run prevention model. But if I were them, again, I would at least entertain the idea, see what I can get for Framber Valdez. Alec Bohm, the Phillies clearly want to trade him. They clearly have not been successful in their attempts so far. I would expect he will not be on the Phillies by the start of the season. I don't know where he's going. Could he go to Seattle in some kind of expanded package for Castillo? That would seem to make sense. It wouldn't be 1-for-1. There would have to be other pieces going back and forth. But Seattle needs offense. He is an offensive player. So perhaps that's something that can ultimately transpire. I don't know. I'm just guessing there. But it seems to me that at some point the Phillies are going to do something. Their fans are getting impatient. I understand that. But Dave Dombrowski is not the type to end the season the way they did and then come back with the same team the next year or effectively the same team. That's not happening. So it's just a matter of which course they take.
Yeah, I've got the Phillies as a January mover and shaker where the trade offers start to change in January. Ken, thank you very much. We'll see you on Fair Territory.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.